before I get started, I wanted to point out that there are these flyers out on that table. We're asking folks to call these two numbers to ask for this man Beto's release from ICE detention. Beto is actually a documented person who's been in detention for 8 months. So we tried this yesterday and both mailboxes were no longer taking phone calls, but I think this is a sign that the phone campaign is working, so just keep trying. Okay, so you can find these out there. Okay, let me see. Is this working? Oops. Okay, there we are. Okay, so, and then where are my notes? Okay, let me just get organized here. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank Michelle Awad for inviting me to the Friday Forums and also to the YMCA staff for all the invisible labor that they do that enables us to be here. Like, this room is really nice and clean, it's organized, the seats are all like arranged, etc. And then I also want to thank you guys for being here as well. So I want to talk for maybe the first half of my time here about some of the work that I've been involved with that tries to mobilize my scholarship, teaching, and other efforts to making the university, my employer, work for the people it's supposed to be in service of, right? So this includes like officially recognized members of our university community, like students, but also communities that extend beyond its official boundaries, like just regular people, folks who are living either in Champaign County or the state of Illinois and more broadly, right? But after giving, like, just talking at you for a little bit, I want to hear from you. And so I'm gonna make you write stuff down, and if you don't have pencil or paper, there's like scrap paper and pencils up here. And then I wanna make you talk to each other and then talk all together about what you want from the university. So if you're a community member, I want to hear, like, what do you want to see the university do for the community? If you're a student, what do you need? And I want us to think together about how we can mobilize our resources to meet those needs. Okay? All right, ready? Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a couple of examples. Okay, so first of all is teaching. I hope that I see some of my students, so you can tell me if I'm successful or not. But I try to teach courses that are really rigorous. So some of my students will tell you that I'm like kind of like the iron fist in certain ways in my classes. So I try to be very rigorous. But that's because if we're gonna go towards liberation, we have to nerd out. We have to have a clear understanding of how we got here and the conditions that we're mobilizing against, and we also have to have a clear vision of what we're moving towards, right? So I'm really meticulous in my classes about, okay, you have to bring the receipts if you're gonna make an argument, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing is that I want to make my teaching useful for communities, but I will only do service learning kind of projects only if it's useful for whatever organization we're working with. Okay, so I tried this out, and you know, I was very apprehensive about doing it, but it actually worked out really well. So I actually feel really good about this example. So in fall 2018, I taught this course, Prisons, Race, and Terror, which looks at different forms of incarceration in the United States under criminal justice, the immigrant detention system, and war on terror, martial detention. And we try to think about all of these things as not in their separate little categories, but actually of a piece about US mass incarceration, right? And so in 2018, I had been talking with James Kilgore and Marlon Mitchell, who are the founders and directors of this group called First Followers, which works with formerly incarcerated people in Champaign County, about like how we might be able to work together. And so I said I was going to have this seminar. Is there something like a doable project that would be useful for your organization that a group of undergraduates can do in 15 weeks? So it's very specific about what my capacity would be, and then was there something that we could do that would be useful? Because if it's not useful, then I would be like, that's cool, let's wait until I have a graduate class or like a 2-semester class or something else like that. But they did have a project. So they had recently done a survey among just regular Champaign people around perceptions of people who had been to prison. And so they wanted another kind of stage of that kind of assessment. And so they said, you know, this is something that seems manageable for the students. So I took it on as the kind of program manager. So I took what they were looking for in the end process and kind of broke it down into assignments that were group assignments from the very first day of the semester until the last day of the semester. And so I can show you more of the project design, but different things were graded and different breakdowns, and we had deadlines along the way. And so we were both learning content and doing this big project all together. So in terms of like class management, it was challenging, but I think we did okay. Yeah, and so we had 2 meetings with first followers over the semester. So the first meeting we went up to them at the Bethel AME Church, and then the second time they came to us on our classroom since we have like technology and could show them some of our research results. And at the very end, we did do a community presentation, and the students did everything. I was like, I am the project manager. I'm not going to speak at all. Like you did the work. You get to present it. And so we broke up into teams and had different kinds of assignments about who was going to do what in order to make this presentation happen. And the students presented their findings, and they also led breakout discussions with the attendees. So they had like these discussion questions, and they broke out into little groups and then talked about what are your perceptions, where did they come from, et cetera, and then kind of had like a wrap after that. And so, and they also, please support first followers, by the way. So I'm just going to leave this up. Okay, so the measure of success for me was like that the students got a lot out of it. They understood that by the end of the semester that mass incarceration is not just this thing that we should be concerned about because 2.3 million people are caught in cages. They understood that it has ripple effects that affect everyone in our community, like people that they're interacting with on a day-to-day basis, right? They also understood that there are things that this university could do more to help people who are coming out of prison, right? Or changing the relationships between this institution and the community, right? So they got a lot out of it. They understood that this is not some abstract theoretical thing. Right? The other measure of success was the usefulness to the organization. So, I mean, you should talk to James and Marlon and see, how this information has been useful, but they really did feel like this was useful to them. And so that felt good for me as the teacher to make sure that I was not just extracting stuff from them to teach my students, but that we were actually contributing to the work that they do. So, in the future, what I would like to do differently, let's see. Why is this not working? Oh, there we are. Okay. So this is something called a boomerang, which my students, they were like, you don't know what a boomerang is? What is wrong with you? Okay, so this is a boomerang. Anyways, but this was us at the end of our presentation. But in the future, what I would like to do differently is I would like to pay, so I did pay first followers in other kinds of ways, but I would actually like to pay all the volunteers who showed up to this final presentation and to the meeting. I would like to pay them for their time, because I think that's, again, I want to make this as non-extractive as possible. So I didn't use any school money for this project, but in the future, I got a raise because I got tenure. Like I would like to pay people for their time, okay? Okay, so moving on. Okay, there we are. Okay, so going on to scholarship. Okay, so I also have been thinking about, like, with the first book, it's like the tenure book, and there's like all this stuff that goes along with that. Okay, so now I have tenure. And I really want my work to be useful to communities. And, in the wake of the 2016 election, everything feels like a crisis, like, all the time. And, I am a scholar of immigration and incarceration, and so I was like, okay, what can I do? And, like, how can I mobilize this knowledge? So I have this book coming out in May called Bans, Walls, Raids, Sanctuary. It takes the January 2017 executive orders on the Muslim ban, the Muslim ban, the border wall, and ICE raids, and then historicizes them back to the founding of the United States and to the origins of 19th century origins of immigration restriction, right? And then it tries to explain, how did we get here? How did things get so bad? And the story of the book is, the argument is, still buy it, but the argument is, the problem is not Donald J. Trump, the problem is the United States of America. That's the argument. But it shows you in explicit detail, like doing these histories, how it is that we got here. So the other thing about this book that relates to kind of the different publics that I'm working with is that teaching this class, Immigration Law and Rights, which I just taught last semester, but have taught since 2009, it has really shaped how I wrote the book. Because over the years, I've been like, okay, how do I explain neoliberalism to people who might not be familiar with what neoliberalism is. How do I make this legible, right? How do I explain why import tariffs are really important to the story of immigration, right? And so I think by teaching this over and over and over, it really helped me explain how like these different intersections have produced the conditions that we're under right now. So I owe an incredible debt to my students for helping me in this way. Okay, but the whole point of this book is to be useful to non-academic people. So I wrote it in a very different kind of voice than my first book, which is much more academic in its positioning. So for example, I had 3 immigrant justice organizers from OCAD, who we had here last night, and from Grassroots Leadership to read the manuscript draft for me. So usually you have other academics read it for you. I had organizers because I was like, am I doing this right? Like, am I showing off your work? So the last chapter is about sanctuary and radical movements, and I'm like, am I showing off your work right? What am I getting wrong? And then also, is the historical part in the first 3 chapters, is that useful? And what else do you need to know to help you organize other people? Right? And so like I'm very much indebted to these organizers as well. The other thing is that I paid them as much as possible for doing that work, because that is a lot of work. So I paid them more than I usually pay academics to read my work, right? Because it's like, this is not what they do, and it is incredibly onerous, and so I owe them financially for their time. So I think, those of us who have resources, we have to pay other people, okay, who have fewer resources. Okay, so yeah, I'll just keep going. Okay, so another category is supporting students. Again, there are a lot of students in the room, so you can clap back at me and see if I was successful or not, and that's okay if I wasn't. Okay, so especially after the 2016 election, everyone knows what happens, but several colleagues in the ethnic studies departments and the gender women's studies department, we kind of got together and we're like, what are we going to do to support our students? And so we wanted to call on the UIUC administration to declare itself a sanctuary campus. Okay, so Gilberto Rosas needs a super huge shout out in this vein, because he and I basically drafted the letter language, right, that went to the dean, but then like all of us worked together to get people to sign it, to present it to the chancellor or whatever at those faculty senate meetings, because he always presides over the meetings, so we presented it there through kind of an organized action, et cetera. Okay, we also collaborated with folks at UIC and UIS to do a system-wide kind of protest letter. Everyone knows what happens. We are not a sanctuary campus. We will not be a sanctuary campus because we're a law-abiding, blah, 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 right? Okay, so having said that, over time, so Colleen wrote a very strict lawyer letter, like the lawyers wrote him a letter saying that, these are the reasons why we can't do this. But over time, he kind of modulated his message and was like, well, we'll never be a sanctuary campus, but we'll do these things. And it's like, we're still not a sanctuary campus, but we'll also do these other things. So we've gotten better over time. So if you looked at the sanctuary campus map, we went from being a red dot, which is the worst, to a light yellow dot, which is not as bad. Okay, so on the one hand, it's I think it shows the importance of actually speaking to power. But on the other hand, it shows the importance of looking beyond the institution, because they're not here for us. They're here for themselves. The whole point of the institution is to reproduce itself. It's not really to serve communities, even though that's the mission statement. Okay, so the other point about doing this sanctuary campus stuff is to show people who are affected by these immigration policies and who knew what was coming for them, that there are people here who see you, who want you here, and who will have your back. Right? And so if you look at the signatories, we had thousands of signatories, right? These are people who at least in some way say that we see you. And I think that is an important kind of messaging, right? In addition, I am not an organizer, so I'm not very good at this stuff. But we did, do a lot of events, just trying, again, to message out to people that we see you, we hear you, we want to do stuff for you. And then also thinking about what are the skills that we have collectively that we can share over time. Okay, so we've done different things like this. The other thing is supporting students when they want to do something, when they lead an action. So this is just an example, but last fall 2018, 2018, a student group invited an ICE PR officer to campus to show off like how ICE is really not that bad and they're just doing their job and like they're protecting the nation, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so a bunch of students were like, I think the event was gonna happen on a Thursday. On Monday, a bunch of progressive student organizations got themselves together and they were like, what are we gonna do? So we emailed some of them, some faculty and I emailed some of them and we were like, would it be okay if some old people like hung out at your meeting just to support you? And they were like, fine, that's cool. So we showed up to the meeting and tried to, it's really about the students, this is their action. But we wanted to support them and like help them out in whatever way that they thought was appropriate. So some of the things that came out, they wanted to do a protest action. And so we were like, okay, what can we do as like old people? And so one of the things was that they wanted was a fact sheet about what ICE actually does. Right, so she's gonna be saying a bunch of stuff about what actually says it does, and then we were gonna be like, in fact, ICE does all of this. Gilberto and I, again, worked on that because we think about this stuff a lot, so we already have the receipts, like, in our computers, right? So we can just pull out these facts and then put it together much more quickly and efficiently than students, right? Because they would have to go out and find the information. I already have it, or between the two of us, we already have it. And so we were able to do this fact sheet. Mimi Nguyen produced a bunch of flyers, and then we printed out flyers to help the students, bring out their message. None of us were able to actually go to the protest. I had a talk already scheduled, and people had other things going on. But our students are so amazing. They're like so badass, right? Like, look at how disciplined they are when they're being threatened by campus police, which is also one of the fastest growing police forces in the nation is campus police. Okay. Anyways, they were super great. So again, what I would like to do in the future is I would like to bring someone here, like an activist lawyer here, to do a legal observation training for faculty and for graduate students, so that when they have a protest, like at homecoming or against the chief or against an ICE officer coming, like some of us old people can put on like a certain kind of t-shirt or some kind of sign saying like, I am just observing. Right, I'm just here to like look at what's happening. But if the administration comes down hard on some of these students and threatens them with expulsion or whatever, some kind of disciplinary action, then we can go up to whatever hearing the student has and be like, I was just a witness, I was an observer, these are the things that I observed, and we would get trained on how to message that properly, right, within the proper channel. So I would really like to do that sometime in the future. Okay, so that we, again, are skilling ourselves up on how to support the students. The other thing is, about this, is that I thought it was really important to let the students lead. Because it was a student group that brought this ICE officer onto campus, and it was the students who were leading the mobilization. So, I would chime in during their meeting. I was like, oh, I have an idea. But it's like, I was really just like, okay, this is really not about you. Like, let the students do it, right? And they did awesome, right? So, like, old people kind of can get in the way, and so we need to not be in the way, but then also support students. Okay. Finally, liberating resources. I'm getting this, I talk about it as siphoning resources, but I think the language of liberation really works for me. I got that from Mariam Kaba when she came here earlier this year for the abolition series that I'm currently organizing with my bestie, Toby Beauchamp. Okay, so these are some of the events. I have one flyer left on the counter up there, so take a picture of it and then come to all of our events. You can also find them on the CAST website. Anyways, so we are organizing this abolition series. We have been talking and thinking about abolition for a really long time, but it's basically a series of workshops. So there's usually an 11 a.m. workshop and then a 4 p.m. lecture, discussion, something like that, with mostly organizers. So out of the 7 people that we're bringing to campus, only 2 of them are institutionally housed or employed by universities. The others are grassroots people. So one of the things in terms of liberating resources is, again, if you're gonna invite grassrootsy people, pay them as much as possible. So we actually have a budget. Can you imagine? It's like amazing to have a budget at UIUC. Can I just tell you? Because usually we have no money. But there is money, and I have access to it, and it's amazing what you can make happen when you have access to resources. But the whole point of having these resources is to give them away, right? So on the one hand, I see this as liberating resources and paying them as much as possible, because when big institutions like us can funnel those resources out, it funds their grassroots work that is unpaid. right? That's all volunteer labor, but that is super important, way more important than giving a workshop and a 2-hour lecture, right? Okay, so, so one of the purposes is to fund grassroots work. The other point is to make these workshops and lectures as accessible and open to the public as possible. So this doesn't just mean putting like, you know, there's like some kind of language on all of our flyers that this is free and open to the public, but it's also about like reaching out to community groups. Like I always reach out to First Followers and Time Scholars and like the different immigration groups, and I'm like, we're doing this, we would love to see you there. We think that there's gonna be a lot of skill sharing and things like this happening. So it is about relationship building over time. I think this is something that I'm trying to get better at, and so I am kind of like scattered and stretched thin and things like this, but I think that you can't just, you know, put on a cool event and expect people to come. You actually have to build relationships with people so that they see what's in it for them. Like it's still their time, right? And so what's in it for them if they're gonna come to these events. So we also feed people at the 11 o'clock event, right? So that, you know, people are being nourished while they're there. Okay, so this is actually, we also are going to later on have an exhibit here. So after the exhibit that Michelle talked to you about, we're gonna have an exhibit, abolitionist artwork exhibit featuring people like Monica Trinidad and the For the People Arts Collective here, opening on March 26th. So the other thing is that we have actually gotten approval to extend the abolition series over the next year, maybe 2 or 3. Maybe if they see this, maybe they'll take it away. Anyways, okay, so if you have ideas for topics you want to skill up on, or on organizers that you would like to A, support, and B, learn from, then please let me know, because I really love to work in collaboration with other people. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking. How is that? What time? How are we? Okay, so we're only at 12:30, so this is great. Okay, any questions? First of all, let me ask if you have any questions about blah, blah, blah. I just gave you so many words. Great, because, okay, yes.
You sometimes identify with the university.
Uh-huh.
You find that a contradiction to that story?
Uh-huh. I do. I do and I don't. Okay, so like, I dislike all institutions.
Dislike or just like?
Dislike. Do not like most institutions, because most institutions, like I mentioned before, are here for their own self-reproduction, and they like once they get more invested in reproducing themselves, then they get further and further away from whatever their stated mission was. And I think the university, this is a very old place where, you know, we've marked 150 years, blah, blah, right? And I think it's very much interested in its own self-reproduction. I think that got much crazy harder and got kind of escalated during the Rauner years when we didn't have any, when they cut off all our money, right? So I think there's something, I understand what that's about, but I'm also like, our mission is supposed to have community engagement baked into the mission. That part of the mission has actually moved off in this other direction where community engagement is defined as corporate engagement. And so that's what's considered corporate outreach. So for example, the University of Illinois is like investing $500 million in a public-private partnership in downtown Chicago, a mile away from its already existing campus, UIC. Do you know what I'm saying? So like, but do I see it as a contradiction? I feel like many of us work in different institutions, like all of us have to eat and stuff, so like, and pay rent, and so a lot of us are going to work in some kind of industrial complex. It might not be the academic one, it might be a medical one. I'm sure if I was a doctor, I would hate the medical industrial complex, you know? Or if I worked in like a nonprofit, I would hate the nonprofit industrial complex. So we're all gonna find ourselves, we live in a capitalist society and that's just what it is. And so we have to figure out what can I do from my institutional, or my societal position and my institutional position and do something else with that. And so that's how I see my role. As somebody who is employed by the university and someone who has now like has a pretty stable footing, we'll see. Well, I mean, tenure doesn't mean that much here, but I have somewhat stable footing at the university. That enables me to do stuff. So I want to know what else can I do, right? So, but even as a junior person, I was just like, I'm not going to sit here and say nothing because that's just not who I am. I have a really big mouth. I don't know if you've noticed, but like I have a really big mouth, and I'm not just gonna not say something because I'm scared of like losing my job. I also publish a lot, and so I'm like, you can try and fire me. Yeah, see how that works. Okay. Yeah, okay. I want to do work together because I actually want to hear from you guys. So we do have scrap paper and pencils up here. Oh, you have a question? Yes.
Do you get assistance from the university to do no, like specifically for the abolition series?
No.
Because it's like
Oh, sorry. So the question is, do I get pushback for doing the abolition series? No, I haven't yet. And actually, the U of I News Bureau, blah, blah, like they interviewed us earlier this week and sent out a press release about like this amazing series that we're doing. So I think we make the university look pretty good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
In the image you had of the students who were facing off with police at that Abolish ICE event, can you tell us more what had happened during that interaction and what was the result?
So the student group that invited the ICE officer here reserved the right. So they didn't use any school money, like they are independently funded. So they didn't spend any school money to reserve the room or do any of it. So the school was just like, well, we can't do anything. So and they also reserved the right to exclude people from the room. And so, you know, so it was actually awesome being at this organizing meeting. So some of the students who were not Latinx or not Arab or Muslim looking were just like, well, we'll go into the room and we'll like, you know, kind of do our action from inside. But those people who couldn't get inside the room were asked by campus police to leave or be escorted out or whatever. So these are some students who are not inside the room, kind of standing their ground against being removed by campus police. So, yeah. I think they stayed for a while, yeah, because I mean, like, I think campus police knows that it's not a good look to be like forcibly removing students, so. Okay. May. Its official drop date is May 15th, but I have met all my deadlines, so I hope it will be out earlier. And it will be available as a digital version earlier, like probably in March or April. But the physical copies will definitely be out by May. So I wanted it out before the election. So, yes. Because we can't handle 4 more years. Like, we really can't. So, okay. Who wants to work? I want to work. Okay, so that was so enthusiastic. Okay, okay, so I have some questions for you. So I want you to take, my students know exactly what I'm doing. I want you to take a couple minutes, like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and I want you to think about these questions. What do you want from the university? What do you need to get what you want? And then how can someone like me who's inside the university facilitate? So I actually want you to write stuff down because I'm going to have you talk to each other as well. So who needs a pencil? Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I'm going to give you like 1 minute, and then I'm going to ask you to do something else. Okay, I think some of you are already doing this, but for those of you who are quietly writing on your own, I'd like you to turn to the people around you and then talk collectively about these same questions. Like, what did you guys all write down on your own? And like, what are some things, and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that. And think about like, yeah, just have a conversation for another 90 seconds about what you want. Okay, wrap up in like 30 seconds. Okay, let's try to wrap up. Okay, so the technology is not allowing me to actually write on the slide, so I'm just going to write it on my own computer, but I actually want these for myself anyways. But so can someone brave tell me, like, what were some of the good ideas that came out of your discussion regarding what you want out of the university, what you need, and how people like me can facilitate? 1, 2. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so doing community engaged and service learning courses, but not in a bureaucratic, formalistic way, but through like more connections and relationships. Yeah? Okay, great, awesome. Yes.
We're talking about like improving the counseling centers because I feel like every year I hear, oh, we really have to make 20 staff members. And I feel like the school really needs to invest in support something like that
Okay.
rather than other things as well.
Okay, so we want improving student counseling and getting them more resources and specifically more counselors. Okay, and you mentioned instead of investing in other things, what were some of those other things that you would like to divest from in order to invest in student counseling?
Something I saw was left by an I-block at O'Hare Airport, and I was like,
An eye block?
yeah, an I-block at O'Hare, and I was like, we could like use useful like that money for something else that could actually help students on campus.
Okay.
At O'Hare Airport. That was a big thing, like, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, so in divesting from something like iBlock at O'Hare Airport is one thing you would like to see less investment in and more investment into student counseling. Okay, I don't even know what iBlock is, but it sounds like some kind of marketing campaign.
Big giant block eye.
Oh yeah, I just saw that. I saw that on Monday. Okay. Yeah, okay. So less on marketing, more on the actual work of the university. Yes? Okay. Other thoughts? Jaylene and then, yeah.
Una casa, so we have a casa which is a cultural house on campus, and for some reason they want us to fund Una casa, so the university is not funding Una casa. So if you, like right now, one of the things that we have to do is like get someone to come and measure that outline, and we have to pay for that, and we have to look for investors like outside the university.
Okay.
Which is like weird because the rest are the university.
Right.
That was like, you know, they have a building that was privately funded. The university did not do them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the comment was that La Casa Cultural, which is one of the cultural houses serving students on campus, the university is not funding any improvements to the actual infrastructure of the building and is also requiring that La Casa do its own fundraising to not only do these capital improvements, but to also just do its services. Yeah? And so if La Casa is part of the university, shouldn't the university be funding these student houses? So you want more funding for the student houses. So this is, I think there's something kind of tying your comments together, right? Okay, and you also mentioned that the African American Cultural House, which is right across the street, it has a beautiful brand new building that was completely privately funded, not funded through the university. But the university gets to house it and claim it. Okay, yes?
The statement that's read before events acknowledging people from whom the land was taken.
Yes.
I think that the university ought to be doing something for and with those groups.
Yes, that's a great point. Okay, so we've now started, after 150 years, we decided that now's a good time to acknowledge that this land grant university was taken from indigenous people who no longer live here, right? Because we removed them. Okay, so the other part of that is like, maybe we should invest in relationships with indigenous communities and people both on the campus but also in our broader communities. I think that's a great point. I think one of the big obstructions to working with indigenous people both here and beyond the campus is the chief. You know, so I think that there has to be like a real grappling with the chief, but then also like an honest grappling with indigenous people here. Yeah, for sure. What were some other things? Yeah.
I would like that the teachers would have a retreat and ask each other why they so rarely show up to any of the activist projects, programs, et cetera, that happen. And if they do not show up, their students don't show up, and their students don't show up. The way the university is scheduled with, I mean, it's all purposely done. The university used to get out in the middle of June, but they discovered that the warm weather and the quad produced a lot of activism. So they stopped May 1st. And that's when you can tell these build the jail programs are really moving fast in May. So the time scale, the fact that students leave the campus in quads in the summer, and empty campus that we have with air-conditioned buildings and no students. That's when a lot of things happen to us. In the 70s and 80s, professors would, and they would get fired for, would take their students out to the quad. I, for the last 20 years, have rarely seen a I know the people in the room, some of them, and they're exceptions
Uh-huh.
come out. So I would like that retreat to happen so that professors would ask themselves,
Okay.
why do they not think it's important enough to get involved in this community?
Okay, so professors collectively need to hold ourselves accountable for being members of this community and not just. Yes, okay. And then also getting students to not just do campus activism, but also be involved with like, community activism. Yes, okay, great. Any other thoughts? How much time when do people have to leave? Okay, okay, okay. Other people? People were talking. Yes.
I would like to see university to look more like the community, it should be a vision, I mean, teaching.
Uh-huh.
And then what happen, but I think it's great to have people coming from all over the world.
Yeah.
I work at international studies, I love meeting people from other places, if I don't have to go anywhere, they come to me, I love it.
Uh-huh.
But I also am concerned about, I'm from this community, and I'm just concerned about, young people in our public schools and where they're going, most of that, a lot of future. So I appreciate that icons.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a high bar of 60,000,
Yeah.
that's very high still.
Mm-hmm.
What can we make that happen? I think maybe have more meaningful connections with the schools and ways that do support people that are teachers, districts, and we're just not grabbing them through data and our research. And how can we, I think just insisting on the well-being of like the citizens who are paying our salaries here.
Yeah. Okay, so the comment was you would like the university would look more like Champaign community, right? So it's awesome that we bring in people from all over the world to this campus, but it would also be great if we could build connections that are more meaningful and long-lasting with like local schools, for example, and then kind of maybe open those pipelines more from local schools into this campus. I think this is another comment that I hear a lot is that, this is the biggest institution in the community or like in this region. And for people who are not already part of it, it doesn't seem to have a front door. It doesn't seem to have a back door. It doesn't seem to have side doors. It seems to have like sewer lines. That's it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think it's people like me, like, to point people to the front door and figuring out how to do that.
Could you maybe align curriculum more with high school people? I mean, there are very smart people here. Think about ways to do that. Maybe it's just a discussion talking to high school teachers or paying high school teachers to come to institutes or to align curriculum to what,
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Well, we really appreciate to your youth, the appreciation of youth leadership. That was a comment.
Yes, yeah, I think that's, yeah, okay. Okay. Other thoughts? Yes?
I'm an alum,
Uh-huh.
I'm a faculty. I'm a community member who is very active in the kinds of organizations that we're talking about. And I think in addition to seeing what students can get out of the university, many of the organization rallies and protests and all kinds of things through the Sierra Club, Indivisible, MoveOn.com, very few students from the university participate. And it would seem that if things are already going on, even prison relief and criminal justice, it would seem that there should also be a thought to not expecting the university to give it to us, but to look around in the community and try to look up with what's already there and what organizations that really use the emphasis on students.
Yes, I think that's right. Okay, so basically the comment was there seems to be kind of a divide between community organizing that's happening, right? No?
It's not a divide.
Okay.
No, it's just not happening.
Okay.
The students are invited.
Okay.
Organizations from campus are invited
Uh-huh.
to various events, but
Uh-huh.
the So, see, I think there's a possibility that there could be more working together.
Okay.
Really is a lot.
Okay, so basically getting student organizing that's happening within the confines of campus to kind of coordinate and work across that town-gown divide and working together collaboratively on the same goals. I think there's also something to be said about, everyone has limited capacities. And like our students are incredibly burdened because they're taking full loads, they're working 20 to 30 hours a week, and then they're also doing all this campus organizing. Like I think it's astonishing. It is astonishing to me that the ICAUS students, the students who are documented and undocumented on campus, have to hold their own fundraiser in May, which is when they have finals. Like that is astonishing to me that we don't just fund the work that they need to do, right? So it's like they have a lot of pots on the fire and like most of them are boiling over. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's something that we can do to kind of like, if there are things that we can do to facilitate, and there might be things that like a grown-up, like a faculty member on campus can do, like maybe like reserve the room where like, that could host like the on-campus groups, right? Like the student immigrant justice groups with the external, with like the community student groups and like have it on campus, right? Or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, trying to think about different ways to kind of work across these town-gown divides. No?
No town gown.
Okay.
It's not a concept of town gown.
Oh.
It's just community at all.
Okay.
I don't, that's my opinion.
Okay, I would disagree, but that's cool. Okay, great. Okay, any other comments or things that you want that you're not getting? Or things that you need to make these goals happen? Oh, yes, sorry. Hi,
Better data on students who drop out, like is it financial reasons?
Uh-huh.
What is happening? Also, do we have homeless students?
Yeah.
How many students are approved by all of that? We know how things are changing.
Yes, okay, so having more I think we might have the data, but it's not very transparent. I feel like someone has the data, but it's probably disaggregated or like it's not transparent. So we would like more transparent data and better data on student life, including things like just the struggles that they're going through. Are they housing insecure? Are they food insecure? Things like this. What are the causes for people to move out, to drop out of school, right? Or have to take leaves? This could be, oh, she left. Like there could be, the lack of mental health resources, things like this. I think we get these kinds of sense that things are getting worse from like there's been a massive increase in students going to the food banks. And now we have like a campus food bank and things like this. But there's been this real escalation over the last 5 years of students who deal with persistent food insecurity issues, right? So we have like kind of general sense of things are not right, but having real data to bring back to the university, I think that would be great. Yeah, okay. Other thoughts? Yeah.
To go off of that, so I know that other schools have like a way that you can donate meal sites to other people. So if the university allowed that, that would be great. I know you can like swipe it and let someone else go in for you. But the people who have like the 40-something meals a week, which is like almost impossible to get, there's like 20 leftover meals that could have been going to someone else.
Okay.
So there's like organizations that are already like doing this,
Okay.
but our university is not pursuing this.
Okay, so one solution to the problem of food insecurity among students that was suggested is some students at other campuses can donate a meal that they haven't used because they decided to eat out or whatever a couple times that month. They can donate and swipe someone into the cafeteria so that someone else can like use what they've already paid for, right? That seems like a common sense solution. I also find that it's interesting to me that a lot of times the students themselves kind of get themselves together and like in order to help each other out, right? So increasing the student fee by a very marginal number to help out fund the needs of documented students because the university wouldn't do it, right? Because they considered them a special interest group that was not, that they couldn't single out a special interest group and fund them at the expense of everyone else. That was their logic, right? But I think the students step up for each other all the time, which I think is amazing. Yeah, I love the students here. Okay. Okay, any other thoughts? Where? Is someone? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, so this is great. So there's stuff that, so I heard more about what do you want. I heard less about what I could do. But like having some more community engaged service learning courses, having a teacher's retreat and holding ourselves accountable for not only being members of the community, but bringing our students out into the community. I think this is also related to your comment. Let's see. Fostering better relationships with Indigenous folks, both on campus and in the broader community, following off the land acknowledgement. Basically, the university giving more funding to student services like mental health resources, to the cultural houses, things like this, and establishing more connections to our immediate surrounding community and making the university look more like Champaign, right? I think that's a really good goal. I think the question is like how, I think there's a lot of people who work at the U of I who want to do these goals, and I think sometimes it's just hard to figure out how do we kick open those doors, widen those pipelines, and then like make this place, show people where the front door is, right? Okay, so maybe one thing could be just like making ourselves visible as maybe not a front door, but like as a side door, right? So yeah, yes, and having better data on like what's happening with our students, right? Because it's hard to meet a need if we don't know what the need is and what the root causes of that need are, right? Okay, any other things? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just thinking a little bit more about direct action training.
Okay.
I know that organizations roughly offer that, but I'm just thinking of one of the panelists yesterday, right? Direct action gets into this.
Mm-hmm.
The GDO spread savings.
Okay.
Right, and just ways that they have more visible and accessible.
Uh-huh.
That can be, I think, a really powerful tool.
Okay, so maybe a direct action training. Okay, if you know of organizations or organizers who would be willing to come here and do it, then we can think together about how to bring them here and when to do it. Yes?
Since we're right here at the University of YMCA, we're saying that this has been one of the main goals of the student YMCA over the years, connecting students to
Yeah.
the community.
Yeah.
We used to have programs, Casey was in here to explain what there is right now, but there used to be programs that meant you had to relax in the community, we had students for environmental concerns, involved community, on and on and on.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Yeah. No, I think the University YMCA is one of the kind of hubs and like pivot points between inside outside, right? So like it's technically not part of the university property, which is great because that's why I like having events here. But then also it's considered, like a lot of people who are not part of the university consider this part of the university because of its proximity to campus property. So I do feel like this is one of those really important kind of spaces. Yeah?
I think it's also worth saying that the university is not going to do this.
No, it's not.
I mean, there are some exceptions. For instance, in the College of Education, there's connections with the local schools that are very extensive. They have research projects in the local schools, and there's, apprenticeship programs for education students in the local schools.
Yeah.
A bunch of things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is not going to be a top-down.
It's a research university.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yes.
And we sit in meetings, and
Yes.
we do have a voice, a little bit of work here. So I appreciate this, like, this is space to like brainstorm and
Yeah.
voice. It's helpful for me to come over and hear some input. So,
Yeah.
No, I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think it's also important to be realistic.
Oh yeah, for sure. I am totally realistic. I do not think the university is gonna like actively, financially, like in terms of giving us time to build these connections. I don't think they're gonna give us anything, right? Like from the top down, but I think we can create it like amongst ourselves. And then also I think there are like, you know, like the pocket of money that I got to do the abolition series, right? There are pockets of resources that maybe if we can tap into them, we can like build these connections more robustly. But I expect nothing from the top down because it's an institution, right? So, yes.
Speaking for myself, a lot of graduate students
Mhm.
And counseling center is not radical in any way.
Mhm.
The counselors that they provide, and general LAS advisors are like overwhelmed by the amount of students in LAS.
Mhm.
So I feel like by the time we get to senior year, we don't know what we're doing in this radical and in the corporate world.
Mhm.
So advising and like radical mentorship in terms of like what we should be doing.
Mhm.
I think a lot of us are going to experience more financial insecurity once we leave and
Mhm.
and find a job and can't go directly to academia because that's another institution.
Mhm.
So I think definitely mentorship
Mhm.
early on.
Okay.
in students' careers by people long term.
Okay. So again, like that's something, it's a resource problem. Like, so the resources are getting pulled up and up, and like they're not going to student services or full-time faculty and things like this. So, but there might be ways that we could collectively start building this in. So like having, I don't know, like mentoring group settings, like mentoring group lunches about like if you want to do a career in this thing, or it's like, I don't know, something like that. That way, because like the problem with capacity, again, I'm sure the LAS advisors are wonderful, but as you said, they're overextended. And so if there's a way to kind of collectivize our knowledge about like how to mentor each other, right? Or how to mentor people coming up behind us, then that's also like a different kind of model that would extend the reach and also keep within people's capacity. So maybe there's things that we can do in some of our departments or things like that. But yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, okay. All right, so we're past time, but thank you so much for being here. It's been like a real pleasure getting to hear from you. Thank you so much.